Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you the rest of the books that I read during middle grade March. Okay, so I know that this is very belated. This is running a little late. It's fine, everything's fine. As previously stated in my life update, I don't get to film very often, and this is the first chance that I've had to film since March ended. So I wanted to share with you the remainder of the books that I was able to read for middle grade March. I did a mid-month wrap up for middle grade March, which I will link down below. And you can see there the first 15 books that I read. 16? I don't remember exactly how many I have today versus then. However, I did manage to read a book a day. I read 31 books in the month of March, and so I was able to do that. Pat on the back for me. And it was crazy. It's the most I've ever read during March. Even though I read a ton, I did not have a single like knockout, blowout, all-time favorite book of the month. And that was kind of a bummer. I will share at the end of this video what my favorites of the month were. But just know that I barely had a 5-star. Maybe. I might rate one of these 5 stars. Most of them were 4.5 stars. So I had a lot of 4 stars, quite a few 4.5 stars, and a lot of 3 stars. And that was pretty much the way that my month went. So it is what it is. But I'm just going to get into this. I have a stack of books here. I'm just going to go through the stack in the order that they're sitting in the stack. So these aren't in any specific order, but yeah, let's just go. So the first book that I have here is Rosetown. Rosetown by Cynthia Rylant. I couldn't remember if I talked about this in my previous wrap-up, so I went ahead and stuck it in this stack. And the reason I couldn't remember if I had reviewed this yet or not is because it's a rather forgettable book. It's very episodic, kind of in the vein of like Betsy Tacy or Ramona or types of stories like that, where it's just kind of little vignettes of stories about, I don't even remember what, Flora, who lives in Rosetown, Indiana, and it just kind of follows her throughout a summer in Rosetown, and it was very, very forgettable. I love the cover of this book. This was a cover buy I picked up at a used bookstore. It's a little hardback book that is just precious. It has a purple spine. It's precious. I will probably keep it just because I like the way it looks. But it was just a meh book for me. All right, the next one that I have on this list is Al Capone Does My Shirts by Jennifer Choldenko, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is a historical fiction book that is set in the 1930s on Alcatraz, and it is from the point of view of a child of one of the security, I think he's also the electrician for Alcatraz, but one of the employees of Alcatraz. So the employees' families lived on Alcatraz, and this follows the point of view of one of the kids. This child, what is his name? I don't even remember. It's first person point of view, so I'm not going to be able to remember what his name is. But his older sister has what we would today call autism. It's not specifically stated as autism in the book, but it does say in the author's note that it was what we would today diagnose as autism, and a pretty, you know, I don't know the proper terminology, so I'm not gonna comment on that. But it's not super high functioning autism, I'll say that. And so anyway, it was super interesting because it talks about what it was like to grow up on Alcatraz while also exploring the topic of his sister's special needs and how he was kind of given the burden of carrying some of the responsibility for those and helping watch her and things like that. I really, like I said, thoroughly enjoyed this book. I would highly recommend it. This was one of the ones that I really liked. Okay, after that, let's talk about The Secret Hum of a Daisy. This is a book by Tracy Holzer. Tracy Holzer wrote Everything Else in the Universe, which is one of my all-time favorite middle grade books. Very, very underrated middle grade book. Krista, one of my co-hosts for Middle Grade March, read it this year. Krista from Books and Jams, and she loved it, and it just made me feel so validated in the fact that I loved it so much. Go check that book out. But Tracy Holzer also wrote The Secret Hum of a Daisy, and this one didn't land quite as well for me. I didn't like this one quite as much, but I still really love Tracy Holzer's writing. It is so good. This one follows, what's her name? Grace. And Grace's mother has recently passed away. And she has to go live with her grandma, who her mom has been estranged from. And so she doesn't know her grandma. She feels like she is like turning on her mom if she gives her grandma a chance. And so she's really, really struggling with those feelings and kind of trying to figure out who her dad was, who her mom was, where she came from, all of those sorts of things. And these paper cranes come into it. Birds are a big part of this. And it was really good, but not as good as everything else in the universe. All right. A sci-fi that I read that has been well loved is The Lion of Mars by Jennifer L. Holm. This has to do with a boy, Bell, who lives on a colony on Mars, and he lives on the U.S. colony on Mars, and that colony is not allowed to talk to other colonies from different countries. There's like been this big rift, and so they have to be very isolated, and then something happens in the Mars colony and they need help, and they have to go to some of these other colonies. And it's just this whole exploration of community and what that means and who you can trust and friendship and all that. This one was good, not great. I really enjoy middle grade sci-fi, and this one was just mediocre for me, but I know a lot of people really love this, so this might be actually be a case of the author just wasn't for me, because I've read another one of Jennifer L. Holmes' books, and it also was just mediocre for me, so this one might be a case of I don't jive with this author particularly well, but this one was meh as well. All right, next we're going to talk about Root Beer Candy and Other Miracles. This is by Sherry Green, and this is a book in verse. Sherry Green is one of my favorite in-verse authors. She wrote one of my all-time favorite in-verse middle grade books, Macy McMillan and the Rainbow Goddess, which I loved. I follow her on Instagram. She does poetry on Instagram that is just absolutely beautiful, and so this was her debut novel, and so I wanted to read this. This follows Bailey, who is also going to live with an estranged grandmother for a couple of weeks in the summer while her parents go to like a marriage counseling camp. And so she is kind of left at this seaside beach house with her grandma and her little brother. And this is a book all about miracles and community and believing in yourself. And the answers that you get might not be the ones that you were expecting. And it was beautiful. I really, really enjoyed this. I gave this probably like a 4-star, 3.5, 4-star. It wasn't as good as Macy McMillan, but I thought that the themes in this were really, really wonderful and beautiful, and I love Sherry Green's writing, so I enjoyed that one. All right, next let's talk about Wild Oak. This is by CeCe Harrington, and this was one that was on a lot of people's radar for Middle Grade March. It just won the Schneider Family Award, which is an award that's given to someone that to represent disability representation in children's literature, and this has to do with a girl with a stutter. This is actually set in, I don't remember, it is in the past, so it's historical fiction. 1963 in London, and this girl has a stutter. She's being kicked out of school, and her parents decide to send her to live with her grandfather for a period of time. And while she's living with her grandfather, she's out exploring in the woods, and she finds this abandoned snow leopard. And one of the things with her stutter is that even though she stutters when she talks to humans, she never stutters when she talks to animals. And so her and this snow leopard bond, and it's just this beautiful, beautiful story about environmentalism and I don't even know how to explain this properly. it has to do with environmentalism, but then also with her learning to find her own voice, and it was absolutely beautiful. I love her grandfather. Her grandfather is perfection in this book. This one made me tear up a little bit. The epilogue was perfect. I really, really like this one. 4.5 stars. Okay. And then I gotta look at my list because I have a couple that I don't have here. The first of which is The House Swap. This is by Yvette Clarke. I read this, I had this on NetGalley, so I read this on ebook, and this is kind of a a mashup of The Parent Trap and the movie The Holiday. It has to do with house swapping between London and LA, and these two girls swap houses for a holiday, but also one of the girls, they're both going through stuff with their family, okay? One of them is the middle child and is just having middle child syndrome. Like, she feels unseen, she feels ignored, she doesn't get along well with she doesn't agree a lot with her siblings, she doesn't have the similar interests with a lot of her family, and so she just feels very out of place in her family. That's the girl in London. The girl in LA, her parents are not getting along, and she's very, very concerned that they're about to split up. So her and the girl from London decide to come up with this plan to try to make sure that her parents don't split up. So that's kind of where the Parent Trap element comes in. But they do end up swapping houses for a couple of weeks in the summer, and it was a lot of fun. I really, really liked this. I loved the themes that were in it with the families and how they were each of the girls were going through their own thing, and how each of those different topics were explored and explained, and how they were resolved. I thought was really, really well done. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the different settings between LA and London, and it's not London, it's in England. It's in a small town in England. Were a lot of fun. I just had a lot of fun with this one, so I enjoyed it. I also read The Aquanaut by Dan Santat. I think that's how you say his name. This was a graphic novel that I heard about on Currently Reading, which is a podcast, and so I read it really quickly. I will say the illustrations for this were amazing. Dan Santat illustrated the book himself, and it was really, really cool. The story itself was fun. It was kind of whimsical. It's about this Aquanaut that is filled, how do I explain this? It's about a girl whose father died in a shipwreck, and these little sea creatures find some of his stuff and his Aquanaut suit and make a home inside of it, and then come up on land and walk around and try to find her and try to find a safe haven. It was kind of weird, but it was also a lot of fun, and I feel like if you're into middle grade graphic novels, you would probably like this one. But yeah, the illustrations specifically were really, really amazing. All right, and then after that, I listened to Greetings from Witness Protection. This one was a ton of fun. This is by Jake Burt, and this is about a girl who is in the foster system and has been for a while, and then she is approached by the government, and they want her to help them with a family that is going into witness protection. One of the things they're doing for that family is they're giving them an extra child so that they're not as easily traced, and she is that extra child, so she has to assimilate into the family and become one of them, but the catch is that she's never allowed to go back to her previous life. And so it's this whole story about her kind of having to hide her identity, but also it was very high stakes because this mafia is after this family, and so they're very scared that they're going to be found, and it was very fun. I feel like for a middle grade novel, this was pretty high stakes, and I think that it's very riveting, very thrilling. I think that it would be a fantastic one for especially 5th, 6th, 7th graders. I think it would just be a blast. So I really enjoyed that one. And then I listened to Ebb and Flow by Kelly J. Baptiste. This is another book and verse. This is a dual point of view book and verse from two kids that were in a fight at school and they both get suspended. And so you start like the day they get suspended and it's alternating points of view back and forth. And it kind of goes through their mental processes on processing the fight and what's going on at home and all these things. This one for me was just okay. It didn't click with me real well. I think I might just be too far removed from this, you know, the situation that it was dealing with. I don't know, but for me it was just okay. I have read, I believe, some Kelly J. Baptiste in the past, but this one for me was just fine. And then I also read the group book for middle grade March, which was Rover Story by Jasmine Borga. This is a sci-fi about a Mars rover. It's from the point of view of the Mars rover, and then we also get little letters in there from one of the scientists that was working on the rover. Her daughter starts writing letters to the rover, and so we get those letters as well. You can watch our discussion about this if you want to hear my full opinions about it, but I was not the biggest fan of this. I felt like it was too simplistic. I wanted more. It was just boring for me. It drug on and on and on, and I was just not into it. So I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but I didn't love it. There were some people out there that loved this book. Unfortunately, I was not one of them. And then I read a duology. I read both of the books in this duology. It's a sci-fi duology that I had just picked up. This was a cover buy for me off of Book Outlet a couple of years ago, and I just decided to pick it up. It's Edge of Extinction. The first one is The Ark Plan, and the second one is Codename Flood. And these are dinosaur sci-fis, so it's kind of like Jurassic Park but in the future. So it's like if Jurassic Park had happened, they brought back the dinosaurs and then dinosaurs took over the earth, and so humanity decided to bunker underground, and what would happen. And so we follow our main character whose dad disappeared 10 years ago, and she wants to go find him, and so she decides she's going to go above ground to find him, and her friend do that, and it is an adventure. And I read both of them back to back. I loved these books. I love Jurassic Park. So full disclosure, I love dinosaurs. You will always get me if dinosaurs are part of the plot. But this was so fun. I said in one of our middle grade March, like Wednesday night lives, that I was not a huge fan of adventure books, but I felt like these were adventure books and I loved them. Loved them. So these are very under the radar. I've never heard of anybody talk about these before. Like I said, there's 2 of them. That's it. And they were phenomenal. Highly recommend. So that was it. Those were the books that I read during middle grade March. Now, I did promise that I would mention my favorites of the year, yeah, my favorites of middle grade March for this year at the end of this video. And so I have 4 books here to share. 3 of them are sci-fi. So the first 2 are these. I love these. I don't know why. They were not going to be for everybody, but I love them. So those are the first 2. And then the other 2 I talked about in my previous wrap up, the first of which is The Grace of Wild Things by Heather Fawcett. This is an Anne of Green Gables, like, witchy retelling, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I really enjoyed that. And then my other favorite of the month was Moon Garden by Michelle A. Berry. This is a Secret Garden retelling, but it's sci-fi, and I love this one as well. So these were my 4 favorites of the month. And yeah, I would love to hear what your favorites were for middle grade March if you participated. And let me know how your middle grade March went. Like I said, sorry this is so late going up, but I really enjoy participating in middle grade March and hosting middle grade March every year. And I hope that you guys enjoyed your experience with middle grade March this year as well. And that's going to do it for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time. See ya.